So I don't like to complain about other contractors because you don't know the situation. However, I've turned up to this house and there's obviously quite a few warning signs that I'm seeing that this system was not installed correctly. So I just wanted to give future homeowners just some warning signs that your irrigation system hasn't been installed correctly. So the first thing that you want to go and check, the most important thing, is the isolation valve and double check. The isolation valve should be within 5 feet of the water meter or up by the house by the customer shutoff valve. And what you're looking for here is just a nice easy ball valve which is accessible, and this one is. So we've got a quarter turn. This has now isolated the sprinkler system, but water is still going inside the house for the plumbing. And then it's an easy quarter turn to turn it off. You then have a Y strainer if it is in Texas and it's below grade. Some places in Texas they don't require you to have a Y strainer anymore, but where I'm located you have to have a Y strainer. And then you have your backflow prevention device. In this case it's a double check. This one is a little bit shallow, but what we want to do is we'll make sure that we dig out underneath these check valve handles. That way they don't rust off. Usually by the time these rust off, that's usually a time to replace the double check. A double check replacement, even a 1-inch total for this whole thing to be replaced, you're going to be looking at around $1,000. The way to make your double check last longer is of course to look after it by digging out around these check valve handles. So really this isn't dug out enough, it needs to be dug down further. That way you're increasing the lifespan of your double check. Next thing you want to look at is the controller that they install. This system is about 4 or 5 years old. So this X core at the time, they were still selling it. However, if you have a contractor right now that's installing one of these, fire them. Like this is not a good controller. This has actually been discontinued by Hunter. They have a new version called the X2. So this one's actually 2 generations old. I see these things break all the time. The clock stops working, the screen stops working, it malfunctions. If you've got one of these, great, let it last. They're only about $100, but just keep in mind the lifespan of them, you're probably looking at maybe 4 to 5 years. Next thing is rain-free sensor. You really want to make sure that they install one of these. It's actually the law that they have to. Whenever you put a new controller in, you have to put in a rain-free sensor. We are in the water conservation business, so we need to make sure that we are saving as much water as we can. The next thing that you want to look at with the sprinkler system is if you're getting head-to-head coverage. If the system has been installed correctly, then each head should reach to the next one, i.e. this head in this corner should be reaching down to that head all the way down in this corner. This system has been installed very, very poorly, so you're not getting head-to-head coverage. For some reason they decided to install 3500 nozzles, which fair play to Hunter for creating them, but they're trash. Like, if I was you, if you're going to install MP rotators, if it goes 30 foot, great, but anything over 30 foot, put in PGPs. Don't bother with 3500s, just do the PGPs. That's what this section should have been. It should either have been PGPs or they should have split it into 2 zones, and instead of having a 3500 here, instead they should have had a 3000 and then maybe like a 2000 in the middle and then another 3000 down there and then a set of heads in the middle, maybe some 2000 360s or even possible a 3000 360. But you're not getting head-to-head coverage, which means that you are going to get dry spots. You're going to get certain sections of the yard that's going to look really green and other sections that aren't going to look so great. And again, we're in the backyard. This is zone 2 firing, and as you can see, again they decided not to go head-to-head coverage. So from this fence all the way to this wall, you're looking at over 20 foot. Yet they decided to put 2000s over here, 2000s over here, which means again the heads aren't going to reach one another, which means that you're going to end up with dry spots. Either they should have gone with a larger head, so they should have either gone with a rotor, or what I would have done is I would have made the zone, I would have split the zone in half, and I would have done a middle row right in the middle. That way you're guaranteed the head-to-head coverage. Yes, it would have meant more zones, more valves, and a more expensive system, but you would end up with a system that actually works, as opposed to this, which is a terrible system. And then finally we have zone 3, which I'm going to fire up now. and they decided to put too many heads on this zone and too large heads. So this zone actually takes a little bit of time to actually pressure up. And then when it does pressure up, again, you're not getting head-to-head coverage. This section over here is not too bad, although they could have done with some 3000, spraying 30 feet instead of the 2000s. But it's round here that it really gets funny. I mean, you could obviously see from this wall to this wall, you don't need a measuring tape. This is clearly more than 20 foot, and yet they decided to install 1000s and another 1000 all the way down. So these heads are barely even getting halfway across the yard. And the reason why they did this, I'm just speculating, is they put too many heads on the zone. Because on this outside section, it's okay. They decided to put 2000. So this 2000 is basically reaching over there. But having this many heads on the outside and that many heads on the inside meant that they had to reduce down the nozzles in order to reduce down the gallons per minute. And that meant that they had the choice, either restrict the water in the front or restrict the water in the back. It was just a very, very poor install. The purpose of this video is not for me to have a go at other contractors and say, hey, look at me, I'm great, and they're not. No, instead, what I'm saying is, don't just go for the lowest bidder. If someone is bidding the system really, really low, there's a reason for it. A yard like this, in today's day and age, a sprinkler system, you're probably going to be looking at well over 5 grand, probably closer to like 7 or 8 grand. And that's because the cost of materials have just gone up so much. So if someone comes up to you and says, hey, I can install a system for you and it's going to cost $800 a zone or something like that, run as fast as you can, because they do not know what they're talking about. Make sure you get somebody here who can do a proper estimate for you, who can deliver an irrigation plan for you. That way you don't end up with a system that you've spent X amount of money on and it doesn't work.